Welcome back everyone to my channel. I'm Aaron Knightley and I'm delighted to welcome a network expert and who runs their own network company. We're going to learn all the tips and tricks when it comes to being the best possible networker you can to grow and expand your business in the year 2022. So do not go anywhere, stick around, let's get into it. Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today's podcast is kindly sponsored by Casita Properties, the UK's leading off-market discreet buy-to-let sales. And for all description and all information, I'm going to include their links in the description below. So I am delighted to be joined by Bradley Hatchett, owner of NetworkMyClub. Thank you so much for coming on, Bradley.
Thanks very much, Aaron.
And the reason I brought Bradley on is that many of you that know me or have been following my channel is I'm very big on my network, and that's what I want to kick today's sort of conversation off. But Bradley, before we do, if you could just tell, for those that might not know who you are, what you do and your company.
Yeah, absolutely. In a nutshell, NetworkMyClub are a business networking membership organisation, and we're really there to make networking something businesses want to do, and rather than maybe fear, make it something businesses look forward to. The way that we do that is we bring businesses together at some of the top and most iconic sporting venues in the UK, from the likes of Twickenham Stadium, the Kia Oval Cricket Ground, the Amex Stadium, which make it something different than maybe going to a networking event at a bar or restaurant or a hotel. And we as a team are really there to support our members and the attendees at the events to make sure they get the most out of their networking as well, and break down that stigma that you attend networking events to kind of where you're left to your own devices. So we're really there to support it and make it work for them.
That's awesome. I can also vouch for Bradley's company. It's I think for me, networking is huge in what I do, and it's something that when you go to a networking event, there's a different level of caliber and a feeling that if you rock up at a pub that's hardly got any lighting to rocking up at the Oval in London, there's a different feel. Even the Amex, local to where we are. So absolutely go check Bradley out, and again, all the links will be in the description below. I want to kick this off. This is something that I talk about quite a lot. Is your net worth your network, or vice versa, your network your net worth? Is that true?
I would say it's true in part. I've heard that spoken about a lot. I've no doubt said that a lot in the past. But it really is what you do with that network, because I've met some people who know a lot of people, and you may, if you went into their network, those relationships might be quite weak, those links might be quite weak. But I also know some people with perhaps smaller networks, but they're much stronger relationships. So I don't tend to focus too much on how many connections or how many people are in your network. It's all about the strength of the relationships, and it's how you nurture those relationships and what you do with them that are going to make that network worthwhile. Yes, in part, and it's no harm having a big and wide network, but it's the strength in the relationships that are going to make that worthwhile. When networking and attending events play a big part in that, but I talk about what you're doing outside of the events to build those relationships, and I'm sure we'll come on to that as well.
Absolutely, yeah, we certainly will. I mean, you've just hit the nail on the head. There's no point having a 20,000-30,000 following if you don't speak to any of them, or you haven't got a solid relationship that you can actually tap into. So, you know, for many people, and I'm interested to get into this conversation with you, because regardless of what business people might be from, or, you know, there's those sort of butterfly feelings before you ever go to an event, you know, who you're going to talk to, do you take someone with you? What are your initial tips to someone thinking, okay, I want to get out to a networking event, I'm not sure where to go, so how do I do a bit of DD to know where to actually go? And then what are some little methods or tips and tricks when you actually get in those rooms?
Well, you mentioned something there where you might have those nerves or might be a bit anxious around going to an event. But first and foremost, you've got to understand that everyone's there for the same reason. And I think when you understand that, it makes joining conversations and meeting new people a little bit more, a little bit easier. it does depend on your personality type, whether you're someone that can go into a group of people already in conversation and break that up, or if you're maybe a little bit more introverted, it can be difficult for you. And that's really what I've become aware of is the different ways that people network when it comes to personality types. But in terms of tips, I talk a lot about, because you can read lots of networking blogs and best ways to do this and following up, but I think it starts with your mindset and your approach to networking, and not going into a networking event or not going into networking thinking, right, what business can I get out of this? If you lead with an approach of how can I help other people, and how can I use my network to improve the people's days that I'm going to meet and become a real valuable connection for them, that karma will come back to you down the line. And so I think having that approach, and something that I think networking is all about, and it plays a big part in your marketing, your wider marketing strategy. Networking is the same as you promoting yourselves via an email marketing campaign, or via YouTube, or via whatever source you go down. Networking is about becoming the go-to person in your industry, and it's about, if someone thinks property, I'm sure you want people to think you. And it's the same for me. If people are thinking networking, I want NetworkMyClub and me to be part of that conversation. And that only comes from being regularly out there networking. It's being a valuable person that people want to know, a helpful person, and a valuable part of their network. So networking is all about becoming that go-to person in your industry, but it starts with that mindset of how can I build relationships rather than what can I get out of people when I'm meeting them in terms of sales, because that's the end result, but it starts very much at that approach stage.
Oh, amazing points. And there's a common theme here amongst all of my guests, and I want to really stress this, is that you've just said it. It's about your positioning, so your marketing, your social presence, actually doing something with it, because so many people have the potential of doing something, and what holds them back is that aspect of having to be at the front of it, and having to, we've all been there where we've had to break up a conversation. You're standing there with a drink and the conversation is going. How do you sort of break that up? And it's having that confidence. But networking is huge to grow a business, to become the face of something. So if someone is what we'll touch on now is we'll touch on investors, and I want to just cover off something here that I believe as well, and I want to get your insight to it, is that if someone is looking to, let's just use property as an example, it's a very basic example, is that someone wants to raise some finance, they want to meet that investor. They typically will go to a property investors meeting full of other new beginners. So there's not going to be many investors there. Would you actually say that come along to one of our business meetings? There's healthy business owners there that have got cash to spend.
100%. But the other point is those second degree connections. And I say to a lot of our members is, and we see it. We don't have an exact statistic on it, but I would put a number at around 90% of our members realise business as a result of our membership, not through directly meeting people at the events, but it's through those introductions that those people are making to them. And that's all coming from that relationship building piece, that trust piece, and people saying, oh yeah, you should speak to Aaron around investing in property and that sort of thing. So I think networking is putting yourselves in a room full of people that you have to look at their network as well. And when I walk into them, I don't look at who can I do business directly with. That's great if that's the case, but the chances of me walking into a room and that actually happening is very small. So I think, who do those people know, and sharing with them who I'm looking to meet. And great if they fit that profile, but I always, when I'm at a networking event, I lead with a question like, who are you here to meet? And typically they'll tell me, if they're in the professional services, it might be I'm looking to meet solicitors and accountants and financial advisors, that sort of thing. Great. Immediately I'm thinking, who can I introduce them to? Who can I help them meet? So I always try and lead with those sort of questions, but also share that information with people, because that person may know 5 people that they could introduce to me. And that you times that by the amount of people you're speaking to, that is where sort of that network and net worth piece comes in. Everyone's got their own network.
Yeah.
How do you tap into that?
Yeah, it's interesting you said you would almost lead with that thought in mind of that second degree contact. Who could you actually introduce them to, which is interesting. And I think people struggle to start those conversations, but also people struggle to know when to leave a conversation, which is my next question to you is, how do you avoid wasting time in a networking room where we've all been there, we've gone into a room and we have that gap of networking, or we put our hands up and we can speak for 20-30 seconds, but how do we also save time and make sure we can get around the room? Because it'd be awful to network with 20-30 people and the last 10 were the people you wanted to speak to. So are there any little tips to kind of move on swiftly?
Yeah, absolutely. Just taking a little step back, it goes back to your point of having good conversations starts by having good questions up your sleeve, and there's no harm in going into a networking event planning the kinds of questions you're going to ask. What types of businesses do you tend to work with? Who are you looking to meet here? Because you tend to ask those questions and then they'll ask you back. So it's almost thinking about the questions that you want to answer, but asking them first and starting conversations that way. That will firstly make the conversations better. In terms of leaving conversations, just back to my point of realising that everyone's there for the same reason and not being afraid to say, really great to meet you, I'm here to network, I'm going to catch up with some other people that I've identified I want to go and speak to.
Yeah.
A little trick that I sometimes use is I won't ever fill my glass up all the way to the top or my mug of tea all the way to the top.
I like that.
And then I'll finish it and be like, I've got to go top that up. Otherwise, I'm chugging mugs of coffee or glasses of wine or something.
That's a top tip.
So yeah, you can take that one away. But yeah, that if you need an excuse to get away, that's a good one. But I always tend to leave with nice to meet you. Obviously, I'm here to network and I'd like to get around and meet other people. I'll follow it up with you and we'll perhaps have a call, or we'll set up a coffee, or we'll go out for a meeting, and make sure that you set up those next steps, or just be polite. Just old-fashioned, thanks very much for your time, and move on. But people do overcomplicate that, you're right. Yeah. And I see that an awful lot, and people end up staying in the same conversation for an hour, or staying in that same group, when just realising that people are there for the same reason and being open to say, I'm here to network, that's what I'm going to do.
And it is all about questions. I mean, my God, the amount of times where I've spoken with people and they say they go to a certain event looking for the perfect individual, and it is all about questions, because you might speak with someone who doesn't have the title of what you're looking for, but actually open those questions and they might have that in the background going on, or they may know someone. And actually what I really like about your event is, prior to the event, you send out a list. Now, not a lot of networking companies do that. They don't actually inform you of who's going to be there, which is really nice, because to have that list beforehand, you can almost identify who you need to speak to in the room. Is it cheating if I turn around and say one of my top tips is you just get to know the events manager or the network owner?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And I've heard that tip before on a bigger scale, in terms of looking to raise your own profile. Put your name in the hat to a big conference organizer and say, how can I help you? Who can I invite to the event? And they will respond by potentially giving you a little bit of an insight into who's coming, maybe an invite into a VIP part of the event, or a drinks reception. So absolutely, on every scale. And back to your point, ultimately we're on a mission to try and make everyone a better networker, and that starts before the event. And I use a networking as a sandwich analogy, where you've got the filling of the sandwich is the event, but the bread is before the event and after the event. And what you're doing before and after the event really is going to be, the value in you attending that actual event. So before the event, we're very open in sharing that delegate list, and we try and include as much detail in that as possible in terms of company name, industry, their job title. And that just gives people the chance to understand, who's in the room, just to identify who they can potentially open conversations with. And we share that delegate list along with lots of blogs and tips that how they can make the most out of that. And then after the event, it's following those people up, which, the common phrase is the fruits in the follow-up, right? So we're trying to just make people better networkers on the whole, and if we can play a part in that, hopefully everyone else, every other event, improves, and the word networking isn't so stigmatized as being, middle-aged white men in stuffy rooms that drinking lukewarm wine, right? And we're wanting to which it has become a stigma to networking. And there are many ways to network. You can go to one event, you can go to 5 different events, and every single one will run differently, different format, different types of people. And for us, ultimately, the principles of networking remain the same. So if we can educate and help people become better networkers, whether they attend events with us or not, it's making the world of relationship building and networking better, and that's something that I'm really passionate about.
So there is a method to the madness of the networking world. I mean, there 100%. Is. I mean, essentially, I think what can destroy very quick relationships is early entry. So, you connect with someone and seeing that I want a service from them, or I want them for a reason, and diving in too quick, not building that relationship over a period of weeks, even months, potentially years, whatever it takes, however valuable that person could be. So, there's been huge value there. As we sort of come to a close, what would be your top tips for those who are perhaps, let's just quickly answer, is there a massive difference from face-to-face? Because obviously we did have to move to a lot of Zoom meetings. Have you found that it was more successful, more accessible for people? Was there more attendance on an online Zoom networking event, or is face-to-face still the future?
Yeah, I think there's a place for both. For me, we had to adapt our business through the pandemic to just be solely online. Our business model was made redundant overnight, March 23rd.
Yeah.
I remember it well. And we had to move everything online. And initially it was, I was of the mindset that it's all about face-to-face. That's the only way you can build relationships. But there are pros and cons to both. So the positives to doing things online is that you can broaden your network, you can meet more people, you can expand out of your immediate locations, and that worked really well for us as a network because we have members in lots of different cities, lots of different counties, and suddenly they were connected via one online event rather than spending the whole day traveling and attending an event that we would have done in person. And something that I saw a lot, goes back to my point around personality types, is that online really leveled the playing field. So we have, as a member of ours, his name's James, and he is an extremely introverted person. And walking into a room full of 100 people at the Amex Stadium for one of our events scares the living daylights out of him. He's not himself, going into conversations, and that's not a great representation of him, who ultimately he's representing his brand and his business. But he was saying to me that joining an online event in the comfort of his office or his lounge or wherever it might be, he's met more people, he's more comfortable, he's built better relationships, and as a direct result has generated more business because he can be more himself.
Yeah.
So I see it's leveled the playing field in that respect, but there is a place for both, because I think with online you're saving a lot of time and a lot of cost in terms of attending in-person events. So I suggest using online as a place to keep those relationships strong. Yeah. And you can attend online events to catch up with someone that you might have met at an in-person event, maybe meet some new people. In our case, it might be members meeting new members and then saying, it'd be great to grab a coffee. When are you going to the next NetworkMyClub event? Shall we meet at the Oval event coming up next month? So there's definitely a place for both. We're really seeing our members embrace both with our online and in-person formats, and that I think will be the future. And I think it's streamlining the networking process. It's helping relationships stay strong, and you're not having to wait until the next time you go to an in-person event, or maybe arrange a coffee meeting or what have you. But for us, that's really helping that networking work better for people. And also the principles, whether it's online and in person, remain the same. Approach those events the same as you would do an in-person event. How can you help people? What good questions can you ask people? How can you strengthen your relationships with other members or the community that you're part of, and then combine that with in person. There's a place for both, for sure.
There's some absolute nuggets there. I mean, huge value. I mean, look, anyone watching this and wanting to get into networking, there is no excuse. You've been told everything. So huge amounts of value. Thank you so much, Bradley. So as we come to a close, thank you everyone for watching. And Bradley, if anyone wants to reach out, perhaps attend. Actually, just before we move on to that, I've actually included you in my books. If you haven't checked that out, How and Where to Find High Net Worth Investors, I refer to Bradley's event, just an awesome place to go to meet the right people. But where can people reach out to you? Yeah,
very active on LinkedIn. That's kind of the main platform that myself and the business are on. So Bradley Hatchett on LinkedIn, NetworkMyClub on LinkedIn, or come visit the website, come along to an event. We welcome everyone to come and try it out before they join, and then we can get to know them as an individual and as a business and see if it's right for them.
Awesome. Well, we'll include all of this in the description below. And for everyone who has watched so far, thank you, and we'll see you all next time.